My name is Jason, and I work a pretty typical ranch job in southern Montana that borders the Crow Reservation. Wake up every day, saddle a horse, and make sure you have everything you need for the job. Whether it's fencing, sorting, collecting, or whatever the foreman tells you to do, honestly. I arrived in Montana in late May and have fallen in love. I came from the eastern Missouri and never really knew what the mountains had to offer. Both good and ungodly. I never really bought into anything supernatural. I just thought that the stories the wrangler named Willie, who hailed from the Crow tribe, were a complete fallacy, made to cover years and years of mistreatment, discrimination, and murder by the early European settlers. On this fateful day, we were riding out to find a bear who had been terrorizing our cattle. So naturally, what I brought that day was my .45 long Colt single-action revolver and my Henry 45-75, and of course camping supplies, since it may take us a few days. For those that don't know, a 45-70 is considered to be a small elephant gun, and while we weren't hunting elephants, I figured it'd be big enough for a grizzly. As far as the .45 long Colt single-action revolver, well, 2 guns is better than 1, and the .45 long Colt is a very large pistol, so it has a chance to get any animal. Willie and I rode out around 10 a.m. since it was about a 4-hour ride to the northeastern part of the ranch, where we thought the bear was. Along the way, while Willie and I were talking, he starts telling me stories of things he'd seen in the mountains since he grew up not far away. "These mountains, man, they make my skin crawl," said Willie. "Bullshit, man. All those stories are fake, fallacies. I mean creatures that can mimic any sound they hear to lure you in and kill you. Come on, stop trying to scare me," I said. "I wouldn't talk like that if I were you." "They'll hear you," said Willie. "Yeah, man. Whatever. Let's just get this done," I said. I'll admit, these stories he told me did make my stomach drop with the amount of detail he had in them. It was rather impressive. He could make a killing as scary as a story writer. 3.5 hours into our ride, I had to stop to, well, let's just say the Browns were running down the tunnel. Willie kept riding. Something in cowboy culture that is considered insanely rude, but I understood. He wanted to get there and get this done. No one liked killing a bear, but it was messing with our livelihood, and we were responsible for these cows' lives. When I was finishing up, I hear Willie further up the trail scream, "What the fuck is that?" I quickly untie my horse and draw my .45 LC, and ride like hell to go save my friend. When I came up to him, it was like he'd seen a ghost. I asked him, "Willie, what's going on? Are you okay?" But Willie didn't answer. He had a 1,000-yard stare about him and was mumbling something to himself in his native language I obviously didn't understand. Before I could ask him what he was saying, I looked down at about 20 feet in front of him, and my breakfast almost came up from what I saw. Laying there was what looked like one of our most prized heifers, completely, well, just completely decimated. Strangely, though, there was not a single drop of blood anywhere around her. I holster my pistol and pull out my rifle. At that moment, I look at Willie and say, "Dude, what the fuck? Pull your gun out, the bear's about." In the coldest and most emotionless voice I have ever heard, he says, while still staring nowhere in particular, "That wasn't a bear. We shouldn't be here." I respond, "Man, this bear is about. Let's set up camp here and get searching. The boss will kill us." "You don't understand, Jason. This isn't the work of a bear. This is the work of an Aitseweo. Willie, English, please." He then coldly turns to me and says, "Skinwalker. Willie, they aren't real. Cowboy the fuck up and let's kill a bear." That line lit a fire under Willie, who was desperate to prove he could out-cowboy anybody and everybody. I used this to my advantage several times in the short amount of time we'd lived together. We set up camp quickly and made it around the surrounding woods to track this bear. This is when it all started. When we were pretty far from camp, Willie went east a bit to hang a pierce. Before he left, he said, "Hey Jason, don't go too far." I responded, Yeah, man. Just hurry up." While I'm sitting there on a stump, checking my rifle, I hear Willie off to the west say, "Jason?" I was confused because I swear Willie had gone to the east, but I figured maybe he went around to mess with me. I said back, "Hurry the fuck up, man. We got shit we need to do." As I said, this Willie comes walking back from the east and looks at me puzzled. "Jason, who are you talking to?" "What do you mean?" "I'm talking to..." Never mind. Figuring my mind was playing tricks on me since we were alone in the mountains, and stuff like that isn't out of the ordinary. We continue on our hunt as dusk begins to set in, and for the last 30 minutes I couldn't help but thinking we were being watched. I looked at Willie once with a concerned look, and he says, "I feel it too." As dusk starts turning into night, we decided to head back to camp, but neither of us could shake the feeling something was out there, stalking us. I assumed it was just a cougar or even the bear we were after, since cougars especially stalk their potential prey before they strike. As we get back to camp, we start a fire and start roasting a rabbit I had shot earlier in the day for supper, along with some beans, a cowboy staple. Willie and I were just sitting around the fire talking about life and all manner of things, until I feel a churning in my gut. Knowing what that means, I take some of the dude wipes I'd brought along and a trash bag to throw them in when I was done, as well as my .45 LC just in case something wanted to fuck around and find out. I waddle off the south down a slight hill so Willie won't be able to see me or even mess with me, because that is one thing he loved to do. It was pitch black at this point, so I can't see anything other than the stars and what was lit dimly by the moonlight. I'm trying to make it quick because, ever since earlier, I still hadn't shaken the feeling we were being followed and watched. Even now, hence the .45. I'm staring up at the stars when all of a sudden I hear something about 30 feet in front of me, rustling in the trees. It sounded big. As I look over, in the direction, trying to make out what it was over there, it was so damn dark. However, I could tell whatever it was watching me. A few seconds pass. By then I realized something. All the sound in the forest had stopped. As any experienced outdoorsman knows, when this happens, there is a predator around. So I draw my pistol and pull the hammer back, when I hear it. "Jason, hurry up, I found it!" coming from in front of me. I fire a shot into the ground because I now knew it was Willie messing with me, so I figured I'd give him a better scare. I don't get even. I get ahead. I heard Willie running off into the woods, so I start to get up to chase him when all of a sudden I hear running coming up from behind me, right as I get my pants up. I cock my pistol back again, ready for whatever is coming. I move up the hill to confront whatever it was, and as I start the crest of the hill, I hear Willie screaming and running towards me, rifle in hand. "Jason! Jason! Dude, Jason, are you okay?" At the sight of this, I completely lose it, breaking into a ball on the ground, pistol in hand. "Willie," I say, voice quivering. "It was you. I heard you in the woods earlier in the east, and I heard you in the woods just in front of me. What is going on?" He looks at me puzzled. "Jason, I did go off to the east earlier, and I was sitting by the fire when I heard the gunshot, so I figured..." At that moment, we both heard it, coming from the bottom of the hill in my voice. "Willie, I got it!" I looked to see what the fuck it was I just heard that could mimic me so well, when Willie pulls me to the ground in a crouching position. Now, a look of pure fear and seriousness plastered on his face. He looked at me and said one phrase. "I'd swear." I didn't need to be a native to remember or know what that meant, so I said in a hushed voice, "No, that's impossible, they aren't real." Logic still trying to get control of my brain, Willie looks at me and in a whisper responds, "You need to forget everything you know about these mountains, right now. A grizzly is the least of our worries." As he said this, he motioned for us to go back to camp. We made it back to camp shortly after. Willie was pacing around and praying in his native tongue. I have never felt so helpless in my life. So little. As I stare at the fire and contemplate what it all meant, I have one question burning in my mind. Can we kill it? Willie looks at me and says, "Not even a howitzer could take this thing down, Jason. These creatures are witches, beings of power your European blood could never grasp. I told you we shouldn't be here, and now the odds are that we die tonight, and they're not exactly in our favor. Why don't we just leave? I mean, we packed light. The trail is clear-cut and mostly pasture. That is the worst thing we can do. The only thing protecting us right now is the fire. They don't like light. If we were to pack up and leave, us and our nags would be dead before we even were in the saddle. We have to survive till morning. Only then do we stand half a chance. What are our odds, man? 20-80, not in our favor." I shivered at this, thinking about all the things I'd never gotten to do, when all of a sudden I looked up at Willie, who was staring into the woods. I tracked his gaze and immediately saw what he was looking at. There, at the edge of the clearing, where we'd made camp, were two glowing eyes. Except they weren't on the ground. They were at least halfway up the aspen tree it was standing by. I couldn't believe it. The thing in the woods had to be at least 10 feet tall. I screamed and Willie shot a terrified look my way. We locked eyes, looked back, and the thing was standing 15 feet from the campsite. I didn't think, and I pulled my rifle, loaded a round and fired. The thing stumbled backwards and then just stood up and smiled. It was then that I took a second to really look at the creature. 10 feet tall, with long arms that went down to its knees and razor-sharp talons. Willie looks at me and screams, "What have you done? You've killed us!" In the blink of an eye, I see the thing's talons rip through the center of his chest and hoist him up. Blood is everywhere. More blood than I've ever seen in my life. A smile was still painted across the thing's face. I could tell it wasn't doing this for the hunt. It was doing this because he liked it. The thing dropped Willie to the ground and disappeared into the night. I ran over to Willie, who was still breathing, but just barely. He looked at me and said, "You won't survive the night. Run." With those words, he coughed up a mouthful of blood and took his last breath. I grabbed my guns and a lantern and hightailed it back southwest towards the bunkhouse. I was about a mile away from the camp when behind me I heard the most awful thing I ever had in my life. A mix of a stereotypical demon as well as Willie called out to me and said, "Don't run, Jason. You won't get far." I turned around and fired one shot into the night and instantly knew I hit my mark when I heard a howl that sent a shiver down my spine. But I kept running. 2 miles from the bunkhouse, I hear loud footsteps behind me and I turn around to see the thing charging me, but it was too late. I feel his claw sink into my left thigh and then pull out. I stumble and drop my rifle, but keep going. I know he hit the artery. Blood is spewing out of my leg. I turn around and the beast isn't there. So I dart off the trail to the left. I tear my shirt and find a sturdy stick and fashion a makeshift tourniquet. Those bushcraft shows really came in handy. When I finally suffer the pain of tightening the tourniquet, I press on, much slower than I'd been. I eventually make it back to the bunkhouse and fall into my bed after calling 911, but they're at least 2 hours away. My leg is still bleeding, and I can hear it outside, lurking, waiting for his chance to strike. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to support this channel, we have a link in the description for that. Don't forget to give a subscribe, a like, and press the bell to get notifications. Tell us your thoughts in the comments section. You can also send us your real or fictional horror stories.